Bright lightning split the threatening sky. The words were some kind of apocalypse, and dragons were falling from a great height to the ground all around. There were big and loud explosions everywhere, lighting up the entire battlefield with flashes, and very close, in the gloomy city, stood the last fortress of humanity, a beautiful ancient stone castle with a high tower and a sharp spire. One by one, the dragons fell to the ground, and even the biggest, red, powerful dragon, and he fell on his face. There was real devastation below. The city seemed to be on fire. It was like a real battlefield in hell. A gray-haired old man with a thick, gray and long beard looked down at all this. A view opened up in front of him, which seemed to shout that everything was irretrievably destroyed. Suddenly, through the spatial portal, on the left side of him, a young man appeared, the keeper of the auto-time, and said that unfortunately, their world could not be saved. He is even willing to burn his body and soul with the help of the time dragon to open a path to the past for the elder. You can't just lose hope, but you need to give the new generation the opportunity for a good and bright life. Otto believes that with the wisdom of the elder, they still have the opportunity to change the future for the better. The old man replied that he was one of those who best knows the secrets of time, always watching this beautiful place. They all belong to this time, and none of them can leave this world, no matter how much they would like to. At the end of his words, the man tapped his long and beautiful staff, which had a golden twig twisted into a spiral on the top, on the ground, and everything around lit up with ribbons of beautiful and bright yellow light. He kept an old diary with a picture of a dragon on the cover and said that anyone who does not belong to this time will rewrite the fate of all mankind. He sent a direct beam of light into the sky, and a spiral of yellow light and rays poured out from the peak of the tower. It looked like gold rings. In the dark blue sky, meanwhile, something sinister, big and scary was hiding. A huge demon with a lot of big long tentacles and eyes watched as a yellow ray flew at him and thought that these people were pathetic after all. And this struggle makes them even more pathetic. Otto wanted to say his guess, but the elder interrupted him and said that this creature is a forbidden god. Long tentacles enveloped that very ray of light, saying that all these pitiful hopes of people will be swallowed up by deep despair. Humanity, which has let centuries fall into ruins, and with this sad hope turning faster and faster into dust. People realized that the forbidden god was trying to destroy their passage, but they were very belligerent to defeat him. The elder shouted that even if they were just pitiful dust, they would die heroes. May this god witness their final fury. At this time, down below, where the battle was too bloody, all the soldiers looked up at the tower and saw that the elder was trying to perform the ritual of sacrifice. Their century is coming to an end, and very soon they will all die here. The man shouted to his loyal soldiers to join in this great fireworks display of this doomsday. Their last day on this earth. Warrior soldiers are proud to sacrifice themselves for a good cause and go after the elder. They are ready to die without regrets. They are people. They present a gift for the future. He will walk along the Milky Way and travel to the distant past to sow the seeds of hope for the future of mankind. And this will be the generation of the ancient wasteland, where beasts and monsters are rampant. Having animal tamers, they fight monsters and get the best resources. Outside the shelters, many dangerous bloodthirsty monsters are waiting for them, where death awaits them at every step. Their main base, Blacklight, has been standing on the dangerous territory of the wasteland for hundreds of years, and its current owner is an extremely strong master. And it was he who created a special camp and training methodology for new tamers. And this is the key to ensuring that the base exists for another 100 years. The action took place inside the big castle Blacklight. A blue-haired young man in a special uniform, which was made of trousers and a t-shirt, stood in front of the announcement that hung on the board. It said there was no place for idlers in the training camp, and those whose eggs had not hatched for 3 years would be immediately transferred to the collection team. And if anyone has objections, they will be killed. Training animals is a huge risk, so you need to enter the camp with caution. The guy looked sadly and with deep sadness in his eyes at his big blue egg that he was holding in his hands, and exhaled heavily. Then he sat down on a large barrel, which stood a little behind, and wondered how it happened. Obviously, his blue egg did not hatch. He only has 1 day left, but he still has no signs of hatching. How insulting it was. Suddenly, the young man saw a bright yellow light in the night sky. And then this same yellow light hit the guy right in the forehead, and the young man fell back to the ground with all his strength. While the guy was lying on the ground for a while in the shape of a star, arms and legs outstretched to the sides. All this time he was seeing a red, beautiful and big, and also a very evil dragon that stretched out its big clawed paws to him. And on this very dragon sat a man, either with a staff or with a spear in his hands. This guy's hair was long and fluttered in the wind. But suddenly the guidance stopped in an instant, and he heard that someone was calling him. Something was pressing painfully against my cheek, and beads of sweat were trickling down my temples. One guy with a machine gun behind his back, and a special case with spikes on his shoulder, towered over the blue-haired guy and asked if he really slept right here on the floor. The younger students can't spend the night in the castle, can they? The guy who had a machine gun hanging behind his back started shouting and demanding an answer. The blue-haired man realized that the flying dragons and the mysterious man were just a dream. In this dream he lost it. Are there really such things? The onlookers and that older guy were looking at him all the time and were surprised that the kid was talking to himself like a madman. They can hear it all. Did he take him for some kind of idiot? The young man suddenly received a strong slap in the face while the elder was saying that he had heard that today the boy was going to join the rest of the vagabonds from the search party and go to the wasteland to get food. And after getting out of the base, will he be able to come back alive? Suddenly, a crackling sound was heard from somewhere nearby and the brunette who was standing a little behind noticed that Su Huang's egg suddenly began to crack. The guy quickly sat down and began frantically examining the egg. He couldn't believe it had finally happened like this. 3 years of efforts have not been in vain after all. The elder was a little upset that this garbage still really turned out. Then he suddenly changed his tactics when he realized that now the guy needs to be treated with respect, and turned into a cute cat who said that everything that happened earlier was just a huge misunderstanding. Then he called the guy sir and said that he would inform the head teacher that he had completed an internship and would now become a master. In the future, he is sure that the guy will reach very great heights. Suddenly, someone came up from the side and said that nothing should be reported anywhere to anyone. In front of them stood a fair-haired girl of simply unearthly beauty, in an elegant, beautiful white uniform. She was the main mentor of the Blacklight Tower, Lu Yu. She approached Su Huang and said that now he would finally be able to interact with his egg. The guy put his cheek to the egg, closed his eyes. He was still under huge impressions that his dragon would finally hatch. He had been waiting for this moment for so long. Leaning his ear against the egg, the young man happily noticed that the dragon was supposedly talking. The mentor smiled at this and said that it was just wonderful. After all, more and more young animal tamers appear in Blacklight. But a little later, the girl frowned because she noticed a big bleeding scratch on the guy's cheek, and then she asked where he got this wound from. The blue-haired boy pointed his finger at his abuser for hitting him so easily. And then the brunette angrily asked how he dared to hit the master tamer. As punishment, she will reward him with 20 lashes, and then he will be sent to the wasteland to get food. There he will receive another punishment. The young man immediately shouted that it was not necessary, fell to his knees and begged Master Su Heng to spare his poor soul. Meanwhile, the girl forgot about that guy and took Su Huang to the other side. A little later, in a huge beautiful stone castle, Lu Yu and Su Huang were standing in the master's private office, in front of a large table at which the owner of the base, Zhugu, was sitting. Folding his hands in front of him, he asked if this guy was really the first newcomer in this half-year. Lu Yu replied that it was true. She heard that he was about to join the search party because his egg never hatched in the end, but suddenly, in some sandy loam way, his egg began to crack. In general, this kid should be rewarded very well. The man noticed that the boy was quite stubborn since he was able to pass at the very last moment. This is very good. Then he told the young man that he had 2 options. First, if his beast in this egg is a scaly lizard, then a man can give him a piece of dragon freshness that contains high-grade dragon blood, and this will speed up the hatching process. After hatching, he will become stronger than other scaly lizards. And besides, there is a small chance that he will be infected with a drop of dragon blood, and then in the future he will become very strong. The second option is that when the time comes to get a second pet, the man will allow him to choose 1 egg from his personal collection. The guy thought that a tit in his hands is better than a crane in the sky, so he will choose the first option. After discussing all the options, the man said that he would order the dragon scales to be delivered the same day, and he really hopes that in the future the guy will not forget about it and will contribute to Blacklight. Hitting his own chest with his fist, the guy replied that he would do everything. As for the castle, in addition to it, the Blacklight itself was divided into 2 zones, internal and external. The inner zone is inhabited by wealthy members of the community, and there is also a cleaner environment. The outer zone, on the contrary, is considered bad and dirty. Representatives of the lower classes live there. The action took place in the outer zone, Su Heng's house. Strange strangled screams came from the house. Su Heng tried to persuade his older sister to let him go, because she grabbed him right by the ear out of the blue. She was just furious and asked where he was last night. And what does he even know about pain if he rides here? This morning she went to the inner zone to look for him, but in the end she could not find him, and she had to wait for him at the gate all this time. She was so worried, and if something happened to him, they have no one else besides each other. What does he even understand? She will just tear off his ears for such behavior now. Suddenly there was a knock on the door of their house. The brother and sister quickly raised their heads at the sound, momentarily forgetting about their altercation. They weren't expecting anyone. A young guy in uniform entered the house, who saluted and said that he welcomed Sir Su Huang, the owner of the castle, who sent him here, ordered to deliver all this to Su Heng. He was holding a tray with coins and some strange closed pouches in his hands, bowed and told the guy to keep it in a safe place. And he also wishes the new master tamer success in martial arts and in raising his animals. The young man bowed low while Su Heng and his sister stared at him with wide eyes. The brunette's eyes lit up as soon as she saw the coins, and she asked if her precious brother really did it. It's so cool. Mom and Dad would be proud of him and would be happy to know that everything worked out for him. No wonder they sold their last big house, because now her brother will become a very important person in society. Muttering in a strangled voice into his sister's shoulder that Su Huang would still live in the outer zone, he continued to stare wide-eyed at the guy with the tray and the strange gifts that came to them. The girl suddenly remembered that she was going to go to work, and shouted to her brother to behave himself, quickly jumped out the door. And in the end, Su Huang was left alone with the guy, and an awkward silence hung for a while. Everything happened so fast that both guys did not have time to realize that just a couple of seconds ago there was a girl who swept past like a whirlwind. Later, the guy was sitting at the table and examining what was brought to him. In his hands, he was sorting through bright orange balls that looked like voluminous leaves, and wondered if this was the famous dragon scales. Suddenly, this scale lit up right in his hand, and Su Heng suddenly saw a reference in his head. Where was the same diary with a dragon on the cover? On the pages of the diary, a diagram was presented, where it was said about hatching an egg and turning into a dragon scales, about different lizard dragons, about the root of the dragon's blood, about a scaly lizard. When Su Heng looked at this information in his head, his big eyes glowed yellow. But then everything abruptly disappeared and he exhaled, returned to his previous state. Su Heng thanked it is not clear who for such hints in his head. Does this mean that the scaly lizard will turn into a dragon? An adult dragon lizard is a top-class species that can easily destroy a small town. And the one that the guy has is a middle-class kind of scaly lizard. These are two completely different types. The dragon's blood root looks like a brownish-brown root. Will he be useful to the guy? A girl who was so talented that she eventually surprised the owner of the castle and became his student. The first animal she bred was a dangerous high-class species. Now, if the guy could bring out a lizard dragon, then maybe. After a while, the guy was already running with all his legs to the medical store. Su Heng, after laying out a few coins in front of the seller, thought that maybe then he could become an apprentice of the shopkeeper. That evening, at home, with a pen and black ink, Su Heng drew a strange painted circle on the floor, which looked like ritual drawings, and in the center of which lay his egg. Moving a little to the side, Su Heng spread his hands to the sides, and then the ink began to glow with a bright yellow light. A thin trickle of light in the shape of a beautiful dragon poured out of the blue egg, and then the light suddenly disappeared abruptly. And then, the shell began to be picked out little by little. Su Heng wondered if it was still a scaly lizard or a dragon lizard after all. The next morning, when the sun had not yet fully risen over the city, Lu Yu was already watching the fighters who were training at such an early hour at the training ground. A couple of guys were discussing the fact that Su Heng's egg still hasn't hatched, and he hasn't attended training for 4 days. Maybe he just died. The second guy said, "You can't say that. They should just wait for head teacher Lu Yu to deal with him." Suddenly Su Huang came, and the mentor did not meet him very friendly. The guy generally understands that he needs to attend training. The students who were standing on the sidelines realized that the guy was definitely finished now. Ignoring the beads of sweat dripping down his vest, Su Heng justified himself by saying that he had to skip training, but he had a really good reason. Lu Yu maliciously asked what such a reason was, and it would be better if she really turned out to be really serious in order to skip very important training sessions. Turning his head to the left and slightly back, Su Heng told his baby dragon to get out. Huge yellow eyes and blue paws first appeared from the backpack, and then a very small blue lizard dragon completely crawled out, which modestly settled on its owner's shoulder. He purred sweetly in response, looking apprehensively at people new to him. Lu Yu and everyone around him suddenly exhaled in horror when they saw this little beast. It wasn't a scaly lizard at all. It turned out to be a special dangerous kind of dragon lizard. The girl decided to leave the training since this happened, because she quickly went to the owner of the castle and called the guy after her. After a while, the master got up from his chair, knocked on the table with both hands, and really confirmed that this kind of dragon is really very dangerous. Is it true that he hatched the guy first? What the hell is going on? Who gave the guy this egg at all? The master looked at the animal that sat on Su Heng's shoulder and looked at everything with his curious eyes. It is necessary to immediately inform the bureau that is responsible for this, and that this person is found and fined 3 monthly salaries. How did they even dare to interfere with the scaly lizard and dragon lizard to create such an egg, almost depriving the future of this young talent? And as for the guy himself, thanks to his work all these years that he has been at the academy, student Su Heng has been through a lot, has eaten through fire and water, and has gained a very useful experience. First, he got himself the most ordinary egg of a scaly lizard, and now he has the most dangerous kind of the highest level on his hands, a dragon lizard. And this is considered a great achievement. And despite all his efforts in the past, the man is sure that this is just the beginning. Of course, the boy will go far as soon as he learns. Su Heng promised the owner of the castle to fulfill all the promises made to him, folding his palm into a fist and putting it to his heart. It was a peculiar gesture. The man is very glad that they have a very talented and persistent young man in such a huge castle, and therefore, he wants to ask Su Hien if he wants to become his personal disciple. Su Heng did not expect this at all, although he sometimes indulged in bold dreams. Lu Yu was also surprised by such a sudden offer. She didn't think at all that after that genius of Bai Suzu, the master would suddenly want to accept someone else as a disciple. Su Heng replied that of course, he very much wants to become a disciple of the master. Then the long-haired man laughed deeply and hoarsely and suddenly decided that this evening he would arrange a big banquet at which all the tamers would be present, as well as their mentors, who of course would be free. They will all celebrate the arrival of a talented tamer and a new student in their ranks. And they celebrated until the evening. When it was long past midnight, the night lights had been burning on the street for a long time, and bright stars were shining in the sky. Su-heng and his older sister Su-king returned to their small wooden house, and even accompanied by personal guards that the mayor had allocated them while in the carriage. Later, at home, Su-heng decided to brag to his sister that he receives as much as 100 gold yuan a month for the maintenance of his cute pet. Hearing this, the young girl offered to save up a little and buy out their old house in which they grew up and lived happily with their parents until they died, and only then the guy would pay for her education. She wouldn't have earned that much even in 3 years. Here he certainly gives. Su-king pinched her brother, to which he was extremely displeased. A little later, Su-heng sent his sister to rest after a hard day at the plantations, because she had to go to work again tomorrow. And the young man himself sat down at the table and began to read his old diary about dragons. It said that the most striking difference between ordinary creatures and dangerous species is whether they have innate abilities to use magic. The ability to use magic is called magic talent, and talent is a key factor in determining the strength of the beast. The snake dragon lizard, as one of the most dangerous species, naturally has a special predisposition to the use of magic, in addition to the most common evil attack. The other 6 skills of the snake dragon are Dragon Sleep, which is able to quickly restore strength and regenerate injuries sustained in battle. Inferior strength, characteristic of most of the lower races of dragons, and dragon power. Also, dragons use the power of the earth, which is a destructive technique. Natural power allows you to use the energy of nature and its resources for magic, and the combination of natural power and dragon sleep makes the dragon lizard so tenacious that its power increases and it becomes almost invincible. The last skill is the extremely powerful ability Evil. The most powerful technique with destructive power is close to the power of dragon's breath. Distracted from a long reading, Su-heng decided to take a short break and therefore looked at the sweetly sleeping baby in the basket. He sincerely believed that his dragon would become the real ruler of all animals. In the next second, this little dragon literally grew out of his little basket in front of the guy's eyes in just 1 second, and Su-heng just fell into a precipitate. He didn't think that dangerous species were growing so fast. The next day, in the master's private training room, Su-heng and the mayor sat opposite each other. The man said that the young man's dragon really turned out to be very talented, despite the fact that if it is too small to draw any serious conclusions. And that's why he offers to test his power in 3 magical elements and choose one that the guy will focus on first. The element of the mayor's beast is evil. The man held out his hand in front of Su, and on his index finger was wearing a gold ring with a beautiful red stone that glowed. Su-heng was mesmerized by this and couldn't take his eyes off it, and he asked if it was by chance the teacher's animal talisman. An animal talisman is a thing that allows you to keep a beast of huge size inside yourself where he can rest and recover. After all, the beast will become so big that it will be difficult to keep it, so tamers often use various ornaments in the form of talismans and rings. From the ring of the master suddenly appeared like smoke a huge black wolf with burning red eyes, like a demon, a scarlet wolf element evil. It was a representative of a beast with the element of evil of the 2nd rank. He was also the main beast of the man before. And by the way, he is very well suited for training the snake dragon that the guy had, since they are perfectly combined with each other. Su-heng didn't really believe that these 2 beasts could somehow combine, but the scarlet wolf is the most dangerous species, combining not only purebred breed, but also true animal anger, which is very harmonious in tandem with the boy's pet. The master noticed that Su-heng clung to his little animal from the rhinestone in front of the wolf, and therefore told him to let him go to the floor and just trust him. When the dragon finally ended up on the floor, the shadow of a huge wolf completely covered him. The kid looked at Su-heng with fear, hoping that the owner would somehow protect him, but he told him not to rely on him and cope with the wolf himself. After all, this is training for him. The man, meanwhile, ordered his wolf to use his evil breath to show this kid how to attack. The wolf obeyed his master and opened his huge mouth wide with sharp fangs to use his breath, and then ordered him to stop. Because everything worked out, the little dragon that had been sitting on the ground all this time suddenly began to glow with purple rays that looked like tentacles, and then he became furious and angry. After observing the behavior of the animal from the side, the mayor realized that after all, Su-heng got a very smart kid. Meanwhile, Su-heng was encouraging his snake dragon lizard, who tried to growl menacingly at the older beast, but it turned out not to be menacing yet, but on the contrary, too cute. The master told Su-heng that his beast had just comprehended the evil element for the first time right now. This purple smoke is the initial form of the breath of evil thought. Also, this dragon lizard really has a very great talent. Already looking at his first tiny steps, you can easily understand that he has serious potential. And most likely, the scarlet wolf will no longer be useful to him. The master called his wolf back into the talisman, and in the next second, he summoned his other beast, This time an earthen platypus, a trio formed from earth magic, animal essence and intimidation. The dragon can play with him. The dragon was very scared of the second beast and hid behind his master's leg in fright, looking at him with horror. But Su Heng could not help him in any way. The kid needs to overcome his fear, because they are training for him. Su Heng asked his teacher if it was okay not to summon the platypus. Of course, in the end it's up to him to decide, but the man thought about the question for a while and finally agreed, because it would be too easy, so the dragon needs another beast. Then he summoned one of his strongest beasts, the harmony of fire, stone and evil, the dragon, Lava Tyrannosaurus. The new beast was so big that Su Heng was just in wild shock, let alone his little beast, who almost gave his soul. They really had just a huge difference in size, and it seemed that putting them in training was a little unfair. But without somehow interfering with his teacher's decisions, Su Heng asked if such dragons were rare, and the master replied that of course, dragons are very rare. The guy was very lucky that the very first dragon hatched. It's just incredible luck. Without him, most likely, the guy would never have received his second egg. Many tamers still want to get themselves such a beast, but they can't for one reason or another. Sui thought for a second and remembered about that very book. A grimoire with the rituals of ancient dragons must be a very serious thing. The man asked if Su Heng and the dragon were ready for dragon training, and then ordered his beast to act. We need to look at the reaction of the little dragon. The Tyrannosaurus growled so menacingly that Su Heng could barely stand on his feet. What a terrifying pressure this dragon has after all. The guy feels like a tiny boat that is about to capsize from this whopper. The man approached Su Heng, put his hand on his shoulder and told him to move a little further away so that he wouldn't accidentally hurt himself. After a while, the master noted that the little blue dragon was holding up very well, and so he asked the Lava Tyrannosaurus to strengthen his attack. Hearing the order of his master, the beast growled even more at the baby, who was trying to stand on his small paws. We need to see if the baby can withstand this. The master was surprised that the dragon stood firm all this, although he is still very weak. But the kid is trying to use the lower dragon power against the power of a Tyrannosaurus Rex of the highest level. Su Heng's dragon has a very high level of magical talent, but it is unknown if he will be able to break through the terrifying terror of the big beast. The guy asked if the mayor's beast was really that strong. The master answered this question positively and decided to ask if the guy had used the orange dragon scales that he had given him along with the boy. The blue-haired man replied that he used it as soon as he personally got his hands on it. Then the master thought that it looked like his beast had absorbed the substance contained in this very scale very well. Perhaps he was even able to obtain some dragon blood, which helped him double his talent. The master handed Su Heng another book, this time black, with gold patterns on the cover, and said that in it he had collected all the methods and techniques that would help him in the development of his beast. There is also a very interesting method that develops the power of the mind, and he should also not forget about his spiritual training when he trains his dragon. Mind power is his personal power, the basis for training the beast. The boy thanked the teacher, and after leaving the castle, Su Heng was finally able to buy back his family's old mansion. People knew that Su Heng had become a master tamer and therefore treated him with due respect. And while Su King was working on the plantation, Su Heng set about cleaning the whole house to please his beloved sister. Although he could not make the house the way it was in his memories, but there was still a feeling of great relief in his heart. It was as if he had returned a piece of himself to his rightful place, and now nothing bothered him. Before telling Su King such good news, Su Heng decided to go to her place of work and pick her up to surprise her. Turning to his dragon, who was sitting on his shoulder, the guy said that it was time for them to send to his sister. After a while, Su Heng ran up to the right place, and suddenly heard a familiar female scream, and then saw that two formidable dogs were growling at his sister. She was numb with fear. Sweat trickled down her temples from exertion, but she could not move, because it seemed that a step to the side and she would be torn into small pieces by these terrible fanged beasts. Su King tried in every way to drive these dogs away from her so that they would get away from her, but the guys who were standing a little behind only laughed at her pathetic attempts to escape from predators. 3 hooligans, and it just doesn't work to call them anything else, decided to come to her out of boredom, asked the poor girl where she was going, because dogs don't bite at all. They just want to play with her. Su King, putting all her anger and rage into the request, shouted at those guys to get away from her. But the guys only laughed nastily in response. If she plays with them this evening, then the dogs, so be it, will not touch her. Unable to watch his older sister being bullied anymore, Su Heng intervened and shouted furiously. So they wanted to play, then he will play with this brick. How will they like it? Picking up a decent brick, the guy started hitting the dogs and told these street rats not to approach his sister anymore. The blonde man, who most likely was the leader of their pathetic gang, thinks that if his father is the owner of the plantations, then everything can be wrong for him. The same blonde man looked at his beaten dog Charlie with confusion. This little bastard, how dare he hit his dog at all? The guy shouted to his second dog Jack to bite that impudent brute. Su King also asked her brother to run away as soon as possible because the forces are clearly not equal. There are 3 of them, and even a dog, and he is alone. But when the formidable Jack almost bit the guy, the little dragon suddenly tried menacingly, and the dog was thrown back. The dragon even bit through the dog's throat, protecting his beloved master. That's how the second animal of the offender was killed. Desperate, the bully took out his last weapon, a knife, but he also intended to finish off the guy who ruined this evening for him once and for all. His friends, who were standing behind him like sixes, also took out knives, which they probably stole from the kitchen of some kind, and rushed to attack. Suheng put his hand forward and called dragon power, and then purple smoke appeared around the baby. The guys were taken aback by this action and did not understand what was going on here at all. They noticed that there was a dragon with an evil element in front of them, so they had better get away. Suddenly, 3 men in blue uniforms called out to them and asked what kind of scuffle they were having here, and even at such a time. Seeing the approaching guards, the bandits thought, why don't they blame everything on those 2 poor devils? They will be asked to put handcuffs on them, and then the guys will have extra time to get away. The chief grinned and said that he just has connections with the local police, so this is not even a bad option. He'll just ask the guards to arrest this bastard. What an idiot he would make of him when he found himself in a damp and smelly prison cell. And when he cripples such a guy, he will meet his charming sister Su King right in front of his nose. His dogs couldn't have died in vain. Meanwhile, the guards came up and a gray-haired man asked if it was Ku standing there. He asked the guy where he was going, and he, turning on all seriousness, approached the man, put his hands on his shoulders, thinking that this was a great tactic to ingratiate himself into trust, and began to talk about how that bastard had beaten his dogs to death with special cruelty for no reason. Therefore, he must be arrested and put in a prison cell as soon as possible, and for a long time. The head of the guard ordered his 2 assistants to arrest Suheng, and he asked the guy how he dared to touch Mr. Ku's dogs at all. Now he must be a good boy, and they will not hurt him. The men noticed a piece of brick lying on the ground, and then Suheng told them that it was with this object that he killed the dogs, so if they have nothing to do, then let them ask him. He didn't have much to hide, because Suhan was sure he was right. The guards took out their pistols, pointed them at the guy and asked how he even dared to kill those unfortunate animals, and even in the middle of the street. Well, nothing. He will definitely like it in the camera. But suddenly the men looked over the guy's shoulder and saw the dragon behind the guy's shoulder, and immediately got very scared. It turned out that the guy is a beast tamer. Then the guy also took out a card so that they could finally make sure where it was written that he was a tamer, and told them to open their eyes if they suddenly couldn't see. The guards realized that none other than the master's disciple was standing in front of them. Their boss once said that recently there have been rumors in their database about the second student of the mayor. Is this really the guy? The man suddenly raised his hand with a pistol and asked what kind of impudence it was and pointed the gun at Ku Zheniao, who dared to so brazenly and presumptuously arrange this murder. The blonde, of course, was perplexed by the fact that the captain took the wrong side as soon as he heard that the guy was a beast tamer. Now, quickly changing sides, the man ordered his 2 assistants to immediately put handcuffs on all 3 guys, and if they resist, then you can shoot them right on the spot. After a while, the hooligans were already handcuffed, and Ku asked Captain Zheng how it happened. He's the victim, it's definitely some kind of mistake. His father is Ku Dingquan, the owner of the No. 5 Plantation warehouse. His father had done Captain Zheng such a great favor, after all. But the guy didn't have time to finish, because he got punched in the face. The captain turned to the other 2 and said that if he tried to escape, then let him be beaten with rods. Then the captain approached Suheng and said, "They say, who knew that Ku would set his dogs on him?" The man is glad that the guy reacted so timely and rebuffed the hooligans, and even saved his sister, otherwise you never know what else would have happened. Suheng noticed that the 3 officers also showed up on time. Then Captain Zheng was embarrassed and said that if those 3 bandits fall into his hands again, if they don't die, they will skin themselves. Is Mr. Su satisfied? Suhan replied that it was unlikely that bully would die or not, but he would still take revenge on him for setting evil dogs on his poor sister as soon as he was released. Suheng called Su King with him and said that it was high time for them, and everything was fine. And holding hands, they went to their home. The officers looked after them, and the captain suddenly asked them what they thought was worse, to offend the plantation owner or to anger the master tamer. Another replied that there was nothing to think about. It is better not to anger the tamer at all. You never know what he can teach or even order his beast. They're just small people compared to him, and they don't want to die. The captain noticed that the guy was saying everything correctly, and ordered the second one to look for a carriage for them because he and Liudong would wait here. And then they will take these 3 bandits to the camera, straight to the incinerator. They'll keep them there, and then. Meanwhile, Su King and Suheng returned to their home, and the girl was just thrilled that they were able to return their home in which they grew up. She never thought that she would be able to visit there again, because it seemed to her that she was in some kind of magical dream. Suheng also shared her joy, but asked her not to faint, and handed her the keys to their new old house. Buying out their old house is just the beginning. It will only get better from now on. The girl shook his hand, said that she believed in her brother and only the best was waiting for them ahead. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. Suheng decided to open the door, and when he did, he saw a man in front of him. He laughed awkwardly and said that the guy was really very forgetful, The man introduced himself as the deputy director of plantation management, Guo. Su King decided to go out into the corridor and asked the man what he was doing here. Deputy Guo replied that he had just received news from the police that Ku Dingquan's son had insulted Mr. Su, so naturally he should do the guy a favor. Guo plans to transfer Ku to the 30th plantation so that he plows the land and is an ordinary farmer, even though wild animals are rampant there. And all sorts of troubles happen from time to time. He thinks that Ku Sr., who at least was the leader, will be able to adapt to this. Guo then asked if Mr. Su was happy with this arrangement. The young man replied that he was very glad that the director had paid his precious attention to this. Guo also heard that his sister seems to be a senior agronomist in their plantation system, so she can be promoted to the position of deputy director in the department of agronomy of their management. As soon as the girl heard this, she immediately doubted that she was suitable for this position. But the man assured her that she was quite suitable. She's Mr. Su Heng's sister. Of course it fits. And also, if she needs it, she can always find him and ask for a favor. Su King's eyes immediately lit up and she said she would be happy to help. Su Heng stood on the sidelines and thought about how when they get stronger, they get more and more privileges. After a while, the guy tried to feed his pet white food, which was according to the mentor's recipe. It is also very useful for the baby. He will eat and grow and becomes even stronger. Feed formulas for tamed animals are divided into poor quality, average, good, very good, excellent, wonderful, ideal, perfect. There are 8 of them in total. The food that the teacher gave them was of very good quality, just for a young animal. Besides, this recipe is very important for a guy as a student. But why did the kid stop liking him right after he tried it? Maybe it's all about the ingredients. But that's right. As it is said in rituals of ancient dragons, as soon as lizard dragons hatch, they immediately eat their own shells, and then for a long time they may not eat at all. As a hybrid of 3 species, amphibians, dragons, and evil creatures, the courtship of dragons and lizards cannot be uniform. It must focus on certain aspects. At the same time, that dragons, that beasts, that lizards are quite fastidious in food. They prefer food in the form of living beings. It seems now the young man has understood what the problem is. We need to look for a new recipe for the baby. After all, the teacher gives him a lot of money, and therefore the guy does not need to limit the dragon in food, so he should eat more and grow faster and stronger. Over the next few days, Su Heng fed his snake dragon lizard according to the recipes from the very book he had read earlier. Already at home, Su Heng was butchering a big fish and his baby really liked the new recipe. But it also led to a big problem. The guy was surprised that only 5 days had passed, and the baby had grown to a fairly large size. There wasn't even any money left. And it wasn't really a problem, but his little dragon overcame the childhood stage and entered adulthood. If they encounter the dogs again, which took a lot of strength and energy to fight back then, now his dragon will not be difficult. Su Heng suddenly imagined how his dragon could easily jump and strike the dogs and then easily tear them into small pieces. He can kill such a person in a couple of seconds with just one breath. With such strong scales, an ordinary person with a firearm poses absolutely no threat. Yes, even if 3 or 5 adult strong men, armed, faced a snake dragon lizard, they would be killed in a matter of seconds. Su Heng remembered that the teacher had asked to find him in the castle when his dragon entered the adult stage. Only now. It's amazing that only 5 days have passed since he stopped being a cub. Perhaps the recipe from that old book really refers to the drop perfectly or perfectly. And since that's the case, it's very important to be careful and keep it a secret. It seems that very soon the dragon of Su Heng will have to learn how to use his new skills. And it would be good to stop frequent formula feeding, at least for 10 days at least. 10 days later, Su Heng and his beast came to the castle again and started knocking on the doors to the teacher's office. Hearing an invitation to go inside on the other side of the door, the young man went in. The master said he hadn't seen the kid in this place for a long time. Is there really so much idling? The guy in response awkwardly scratched his head, sincerely apologized and said that he had been working hard all this time to develop his dragon so that he was strong, big and generally the best, so that he could not attend important training sessions. But he was very sorry. And by the way, thanks to the master's recipe, his dragon has successfully reached the adult stage. As soon as the master heard this news, he opened his eyes in amazement and was too surprised that the beast had grown so quickly. But for Su Hien, growing up in 10 days seemed to be the norm. The teacher said it doesn't work that way. It took his 8th student Bai Su a month for her beast to progress from the childhood stage to the adult stage. So how fast I still need to eat besides. Her ice lotus is 2 levels lower than his snake dragon. In his head, Su Hien is already really thinking about what would be much better without such a wild growth rate. The master said that we see that his dragon not only has outstanding abilities, but also has a unique potential for growth. If he is already an adult dragon, then he is probably already familiar with his new abilities. Now he has dragon power, 1st and 2nd degree, and these are 2 types of skills: dragon power, elimination, and dragon power, shock and awe. And the breath of evil thought was also raised to a new level and formed into a stream of evil thought. The master was shocked by what he heard. Is the guy just joking in such a short time? He managed not only to grow him, but also to teach him skills and develop them. The guy says that it's all thanks to the hard work of the master with him. And I thought to myself that it was still very good that he did not tell the master about the mastered dream of the dragon, force of nature and evil attack. The master replied that he did not doubt the guy. Now they need to go to his training room and see what he is capable of now. After a while they found themselves in the private training ground of the mayor. The man asked Su Heng's snake dragon lizard to prove himself in the best way and show what he had learned there in 10 days. And if it is true, as the young man described it, then the man will give him a personal talisman of the master. In the end, Su Heng tried hard and went through a lot of obstacles. And how can you be a master without your convenient talisman? The guy mentally asked the kid not to let him down, because it depends on him whether the guy gets his talisman. The master summoned the stone armadillo bear to play with that cute baby dragon. The young man was stunned when he saw such a large and formidable beast. And I also asked the teacher how many more animals he has with the element of evil, because every time a man trains him, he calls for a new beast. The mayor laughed and said that he was still too weak. He has tamed only 10-20 high-class danger beasts, and only half of them are at the level of a stone bear or a lava tyrannosaurus. And now the guy has to show how much he wants the master's talisman. Let him show him everything the guy is capable of. It's time to see the results of his labors. The bear growled menacingly. And when the master saw the guy and his beast standing on their feet, he recognized the strength of the dragon, a holding barrier. It's not bad that a guy's dragon at the growth stage can resist an already full-fledged individual. Later, the master ordered the kid to attack with evil breath. Su Heng told his dragon to use the stream of evil thoughts. The dragon exhaled a purple ball of power, but it wasn't strong enough for the bear. Did the dragon eat little porridge in the morning with this small ball? No more than a tickle for a bear. Then the guy asked to use the pearl of evil. The new force penetrated the bear's armor and the master praised him for it. He didn't think that the kid had learned the evil breath technique so well and would use it in attack. He used the accumulation of dark energy and was able to create a real series of shots, as if with bullets, having also built a series of very accurate attacks. Very good. The guy scratched his head. Awkwardly. He said that the teacher was overpraising him. In fact, there is another pearl of evil technique that attacks so accurately that the opponent cannot dodge. But only attacks of this level will not be able to penetrate the armor of the stone bear. The master said he was pleased with the young man's attacks, and so he handed him a talisman ring. Although it can't hold many animals like his, but it can still hold 5. There is enough space to accommodate 5 animals, and if his tamed animals make room a little, even 10 will fit. The guy thanked the master, but he said that it was too early to rejoice. Despite the fact that the guy has developed his technique and magic control quite well, his pain experience is at 0. Real fights are the best way to increase it. The master decided to send the guy to the northern section of their defense, where there will be a great opportunity to fight with dangerous types of animals. In 3 days he has to report to the military headquarters and inform, and then someone will give him an appointment. Behind the high walls of blacklight there are 4 defensive lines that guard the entire base. Each section of the defensive lines consists of military camps, and a lot of animal tamers along with specially trained military with firearms. The southern and northern borders are the most dangerous. There is a battle with dangerous species almost every day. Most of the materials in the city related to dangerous types of beasts were also the results of the hunting of the 4 main frontiers. Within 3 days, Su Heng collected his advance for the next month of benefits for animal tamers in the amount of as much as 250,000 yuan. He spent most of this amount buying ingredients for food for his dragon, as well as 3 whole days preparing these ingredients into formulas in order to preserve the food for as long as possible. By agreement with the military headquarters of the outer fortress, Su Heng went to the northern frontier, Post 7, as a member of the team. The 4 defensive lines on the base's territory were created largely for the plantations located in these wild places. In the end, the area of land from which you can harvest is limited, and the total harvest of 7 plantations inside the gathering cannot meet the needs of 50-60,000 people living in the city. Working on plantations outside the city is second only to joining search teams in terms of the degree of danger, and this is also one of the most dangerous industries that the residents of the base are trying to avoid. If Su Han's memory does not change, Ku Dingquan, the head of Plantation number 5, was assigned to Plantation number 30, which was located in the security zone of the northern line of defense. The military car drove up to the right place at the 7th observation point and wished the guy good luck, because he had to come back and report. 2 guys were standing somewhere upstairs and were surprised that the chief of staff himself brought the newcomer. The second young man asked the first one if he had not heard that this novice master tamer had his luggage literally stuffed with rations for taming animals. Reddish was surprised and said that then they urgently need to go and help this newcomer. The guys ran to Mr. Su Heng and started carrying his things, asking how he could carry his own things. They will do everything for him without any problems. The young man did not expect such pressure, and before he had time to answer at least something, the guys continued. The red-haired man said his last name was Huang, but Su Heng could call him Xiao Huang. Why, after all, from now on, the safety of the 7th point depends only on Su Hai. Su Heng was embarrassed by such excessive politeness because Xiao Huang was older than him, so the guy would call him Huang Ji. From this, Wan almost burst into tears, because for the first time he meets a non-pompous master tamer. He shouted to the others to move quickly, and then they could have a feast for Mr. Su. There are only 29 guard posts on the northern border, and Su Heng must report on the situation at the 7th guard post. More than 10 years ago, it was blown to pieces by a flying by dangerous species that did not leave a single survivor at the guard post. Since then, the entire modern guard post number 7 has been rebuilt on the ruins. This will be the place where Su Heng will break into his first real fight. After a while, Su Heng found himself in the dining room and Huang Ji brought him a plate of Awen dishes. Although they do not have special conditions for cooking delicious food, but his cooking is simply excellent. Su asked Huang Ji to call him by his first name. They are comrades in arms, and it would be too strange if he addressed the guy as Mr. Su. Master Tamer is a very important person, so Han will call him Su Ji. The guy agreed to this and said that he would call him Su Ji, and he was Huang Ji, and at the same time everyone was thinking about his own. And Su would also like to ask if they often have dangerous types of animals here. The blonde guy who was eating a chicken leg said that here they are. After all, somewhere on the middle line, so the pressure on the defense, of course, is less than at more distant posts. But still, there are a lot of fish in this place that can slip through the net. Behind Suji was a bunch of dangerous beasts that they had caught over the past few days. In the middle and at the end of each month, a military officer comes to this place with a team from the city, which is responsible for transporting rare resources and counting rewards. Su Heng noted that it is really very difficult to do this without a tamed beast. Another guy asked what the Su beast could do if he could show it to them, to which Wang yelled at him. Is he really impudent at all? Does he not know the rules of tamed animals? But at this time, Su Heng just stood up and summoned his tamed beast. The dragon flew out of the talisman ring. The guys couldn't believe that a very dangerous and rare kind of dragon lizard appeared in front of them. Su introduced him to the guys who couldn't take their eyes off the beast. One of the guys asked if Suji really has the first tamed beast. The most dangerous kind is just awesome. The dragon demonstrated dragon power, shock and awe, which scared one of the guys. But the owner quickly subdued him and said that the dragon should not dare to attack his own. No manners. Su asked Zio who if he was okay, and he replied that he was fine. Suji's beast is very strong, and he is a great master himself. The guys who were standing on the sidelines began to make fun of Zio who, because in fact he almost peed his pants out of fear, and the boy was embarrassed and asked his comrades to stop, because there was nothing like that. After the meal, Su Heng got to know all his 5 brothers in the post. After a short recovery, Su Heng, on the advice of his mentor, began to train the power of the mind, using the spiritual hammer. The method that his mentor advised him is called Crystal Mind and consists of 3 stages. The first stage is to remove all distractions and create a crystal environment for meditation around yourself, meditating as if on a giant crystal. The second stage is working with a specific breathing rhythm, when the mind gradually becomes one with the meditative environment. And finally, the third stage with the underlying spiritual hammer method. With the current progress of the guy, it will take him only half a year to reach a crystal clear mind, as, in general, the teacher told him. A monster like Sister Baisu, who has refined her mind to crystal clarity in just a month or so, she must be really bright like this moon. Suddenly, a beacon started flashing in the tower, and the guy realized that it was an alarm signal. Wang Ji rushed into his room and told him that they needed to get down to business faster. It was late at night outside, a bright moon was shining. Red beetles were visible in the binoculars, and it seemed to Su that this was a dangerous species of the 2nd rank, a barefoot beetle. Instead of paws, he has armored claws, serbs who can easily split a cobblestone. This is a dangerous species of the 2nd rank, the scythe beetle. Wang said it was the most common kind of beast in their sector. Although these insects multiply rapidly, killing 4 beetles at once is not a problem. Wang Ji gathered the team and said that everyone should prepare for battle. He and Lack Yu will be at the machine gun position of the watchtower. Owan will take the forward sniper position on the northwest side. Zio Hu and Zio Hu will guard the 5th and 6th shootings on the 1st level. Then Wang asked the guys to help Suji finish off the suckers with this. The bullet flew straight at the beetle. A dangerous kind of ability is perception. Reception, the imposition of armor. The bullet was able to penetrate the red armor, the dome of the beetle. Wan was at the helm and firing a machine gun at the bugs. He was pleased that they had killed 1,000 at once. Only the main thing to remember is not to blow their heads off. Otherwise they will not be given any military awards for this. The guy remembered that the scythe beetle's best skill is armor overlay. It is not particularly effective, but significantly weakens the effect of ordinary bullets. Continuously firing a machine gun, you can create a great opportunity for a sniper too. Su looked up into the sky and saw how, while the beetle's armor was destroyed due to a hail of bullets, the sniper shoots at the beetle itself, thereby demolishing his head. Here it is, the battlefield of the northern frontier. Although all these guys are not master tamers, but their understanding of the situation and skill honed in repeated battles, is enough to provide all the necessary combat power. The bugs died one by one, until the guys noticed that one of them was boldly running away from them. He needs to be killed urgently. The fighters took the car and chased the Beetle. Huang gave orders. He ordered one guy to keep an eye on the internal border because everything is gilded there, so you need to be on the alert. Su Heng got off the car and stood not far from it, looking at the Beetle that was among the trees. First, you need to see what will happen to him after the evil attack. The guy released the dragon from the ring, and he released his power, which did not penetrate the Beetle's armor. He's poor, flew off to the side, raising clouds of smoke and dust behind him. It seems that his armor really worked so well that it repelled the guy's attack and received almost no damage. Su then ordered the snake dragon to use the stream of evil thoughts, the pearl of evil. All the power flew into the Beetle again, but again nothing happened. This Beetle has a pretty thick skin. The next attack was shock and awe, and the Beetle again thought of running away from the dragon. But it wasn't there. The guy ordered the dragon to use the powers of the earth, and then the Beetle was pierced through. Everyone who had been in the van before froze in amazement. It seems that Suji doesn't need their help at all. That's the sight. It gives me goosebumps. Later, the guys shared their impressions of what they saw. Suji was a real hero, used different attacks and was able to defeat the bug. Juan put his hand on his shoulder and shared his thoughts that he used to think that he, like sweaty beginners, just decided to get rich. But the guy is a real nugget himself. Right now, Juan is very impressed. Su is really cool. It was awkward for the young man, because he was not the only one trying. Suddenly some kid came running and said that someone was coming to them. Wang and Su decided to take a look and ran to the sick. From a height they saw that a command convoy with a bunch of trucks was approaching them. It was very strange, because usually when recounting military supplies, the command comes to them only by noon after they visit each watchtower and post. So why did they arrive so early today? Su Hen had a hunch. A blond man with a cigarette in his mouth got out of the truck. It was the commander-in-chief of the Northern Defensive Line, Lu Ling. The guys greeted him, and the man recognized Huan, who, after so many years, hadn't changed a bit at all. Huang was moved because he didn't think the commander-in-chief remembered his name. He's so flattered. She had come all this way on purpose to work with them. But the man waved off and said that it was less than a 10-minute drive from the barrier to here, so the path was not difficult. Then Lu Ling lifted his sunglasses, approached the newcomer and asked how he was getting used to his new place. Su Heng began to mumble that he needed to report something there, and stuttered began to say that Su Heng had met all his comrades in the service, and he had adapted well to life here. And also the guy saluted. But suddenly he felt the hand of a man on his head, who approvingly said that it was not necessary to talk to him so formally. The teacher had already told him a couple of times that he had taken a new very talented student. And he also heard the chief of staff say that the guy didn't see him when he came to the headquarters, and that they just missed each other last time because the guy went to exterminate those stupid bastards. But Lu decided to come again to see Su Heng in person again. The guys on the sidelines could not believe. Did the commander-in-chief come to their tiny post just for the sake of Su Hna? Huang thought that Su was an ordinary master, but did not know that he was a personal disciple of their mayor. It was lucky that he didn't cause any trouble during this time. The commander-in-chief held a cigarette between his teeth and asked the guys why they were frozen like pillars. They should take stock of the battles over the last half a month on the post and not interfere with them with Su Heng. Lu then asked Suji to summon his snake dragon lizard. The mentor specifically instructed the man to come and monitor the development of the guy, then to report everything to the master. The guy was surprised. He thought that the mentor had forgotten about him at all as soon as the guy left the city. And it turns out that he has already sent his spy. The guy summoned a dragon, and it flew into the sky. The commander-in-chief was fascinated by such a sight and asked Su Heng if his dragon had not hatched a little less than a month ago. The young man replied that his dragon had grown very quickly since he learned how to use dragon magic. Lu Ling said that he asked just like that, and his at one time grew even more even. After finishing with the side questions, Lu said that the mentor asked him to find out how well the guy had honed his dragon's fighting skills. Lu has his own tamed dragon too, so he'll let him check it out. Lu has summoned my dragon, the Horned Earth Dragon. The Horned Earth Dragon is a dangerous species with two bloodlines, Earth and Dragon, with the same racial rank as the dragon snake lizard. He was bred by Lu Ling to the level of a full-fledged dangerous species. Thanks to his thick skin and horns, he is able to withstand second-rank beasts at the end of his growth for a short period of time. And this is one of the main advantages of Lu Ling. The huge earth dragon touched his claw to the forehead of the baby, and he was a little scared. Then Su Heng asked Lu to tell his beast to be gentle with the baby, otherwise he would just trample his dragon with one of his paws. The man assured the guy that his dragon knows the measure, so he will not harm the blue dragon. The young man confided in the elder and said that everything was fine then. The blonde noticed that it looks like the snake dragon has not woken up yet, so it needs to be woken up by a small earthquake. The horned dragon stamped his paw on the ground with all his might, which even cracked. Levitation is an advantage of the ability to control spiritual power after training the power of mind. But now there is no time to think about it at all. so Su told his beast to use an evil attack and dodge the blows. The dragon pushed off from his master's shoulders. Then the guy ordered his snake dragon to use evil pearls against this horned dragon, but it had durability without damage. Counting on Su Heng's dragon to defeat the horned dragon is just a dream. Yes, even to lose beautifully would be very cool. All the guy can do is show the results of the development of his dragon, which he has achieved in all this short time, and not disappoint the teacher, who is so worried, being tens of kilometers away from him. Su shouted to the kid that his advantage was speed, so he had to surround the big dragon with evil pearls. The kid was attacked again. There was purple light everywhere. He even made purple rays from the mouth towards the big dragon. But since he didn't have enough strength, he needed to use the power of the earth to recover quickly. Then the dragon's power was needed, the dance of the earth, and large stones grew out of the earth. However, as soon as the elder dragon stamped his paw, the baby flew back. Looking after all these, Lu Ling laughed and praised the guy for a good tactic. However, his dragon's powers are already at the 9th level, so his earth dance is nothing to him. The young man asked if it wasn't Lu who told the guy to use everything he could so as not to disappoint his teacher. The commander-in-chief grunted, scratched his head, and said that he did not want to offend the guy. It really looks like this. But the man just already understands what snake lizard dragons are capable of. So the guy's attacks are quite good, and most likely the teacher will be very pleased. This snake dragon is developing much faster than the commander-in-chief's dragon was developing. Their teacher really took in a very talented student. Soon after the commander-in-chief's departure, winter came, and it was wildly cold at the guard post. The walls were not as high and strong as on their base, able to shelter from the winter cold. The blonde man got up from his sleeping bag, suture teeth from the cold. And it was only the beginning of a harsh winter. The guy from the next bag told him that then you need to become a master tamer, because he has a spiritual cover and he is warm. Suddenly an alarm sounded, and all the soldiers jumped up from their sleeping places. Sentry post number 3 in the northern part called, and they said that plantation number 25 was attacked by a group of dangerous species. Wang began to assign everyone to their assignments. Xiaohu and Suhi, they will go together on a call from the 3rd post, and Lak Yu and Awen will guard the house. The guys obediently ran to follow orders. According to Captain Li, the situation is really serious now, since almost the entire 25th plantation has been completely captured. More than 20 individuals of a dangerous species entered the territory, and not about 5 less dangerous ones. All the plantation workers are now locked in the staff quarters. They have about a dozen broken guns, with which they somehow fight back. But it's only a matter of time before the beasts get inside. The detachment is going to gather support for all the posts of Patrol Aza number 3 and number 4 in the northern sector, as well as the main forces that will almost completely come out to protect the plantation. The collection should be completed by 4 o'clock in the morning, since the attack will begin at exactly this time. It was already 3:40 on the clock, so Huang ordered Xiaohu to get ready faster and go to the place. Putting his hand to his head, Huang Ji said to report to Sir. Huang Chengju, Zhao Sohu and Su Huan from post number 7 on the northern border arrived at the designated place. The guy with the walkie-talkie asked Huang Ji to enter the territory faster, because he would transmit information over the walkie-talkie. In the truck, a voice came through the receiver saying that they had conducted a reconnaissance. Those bastards broke in through the 6th gate on the northwest side. Now they are in the grain area, tearing pieces out of dead bodies. All the survivors were moved to the staff quarters and are now defending themselves, strengthening the protection. All fighting squads. All vehicles will line up in the shape of a spear. 2 armored vehicles will be used as spear tips, directly attacking and opening fire on the dormitory building on the plantation. Everyone should be very careful. The dangerous species that invaded this place are dangerous wolves that are resistant to attacks and can easily bite off their head. They urgently need to be killed and free the people who are trying to defend themselves. Meanwhile, the tanks tried to smash the wolves, but they seemed too strong. One wolf climbed to the top of the cliff and began to howl. Su Heng walked up to the car seat and asked Xiaohu to pull back a little because he sensed something was wrong. Juan asked how it was, and then the young man asked him if he had heard that wild howl. He had heard from his teacher that such a dangerous species as the poisonous wolf could evolve into the ultimate form of the alpha wolf. The driver shouted that something was wrong and called Suji to look. Wolves are strangely moving away. What are they up to? The wolf that stood staring must have been their leader, because he directs them. No wonder so many individuals broke through the fortifications. The poison wolf's skill is poison mist. Therefore, the whole army of cargo got into a thick poisonous fog, which they did not expect in any way. Suji told everyone to turn on the infrared sight and be on everyone's guard and not miss their teammates. It's not that simple. The guy asked Xiaohu to pull back a little. And at that time, in the side window, Wang Ji saw a wolf running next to their car. The wolf broke through the window of the car and then completely chewed it. It was just a shadow wolf companion. The special ability of the leader of the poisonous wolves is a shadow double, which means there is another leader here. The guys saw that he was approaching the halo and a huge wolf crashed into the side of their truck. Because of this, it was very difficult for Huan to hit the beast. Huang couldn't even break through his thick armor a little bit. The wolf jumped on the car with all his might, And then Su-heng steps in, who quickly summoned his snake dragon. The dragon appeared and began to use the power of the dragon, shock and awe. Then a stream of evil thoughts and pearls of evil. All this hit the wolf in a terrible head over heels, and he fell off the car. Su took the radio and asked the commander to cease fire to avoid accidental injuries. The guy will take care of the leader of the poisonous wolves. The guard watched through his binoculars at the scene of the battle, and thought that it was not surprising that the student of the mayor coped. He did it with such force, even though he was still at the training stage. The man ordered on the radio to cease all fire to support military vehicle number 10 in the northern sector. And the leader of the poisonous wolves is completely on Mr. Su-heng. They will do the rest of the little things, so as not to interfere with the main battle with the leader of the pack. Su-heng jumped down from the high truck bed, but because of the too thick poisonous fog that was everywhere and seemed to envelop the entire space between people, it was impossible to understand where the leader of the wolves was hiding. But suddenly Huang Ji pointed to the side and they saw that the wolf was just tearing one of the cars with its claws. The people inside were screaming and calling for someone to help him, and then Suji came. He summoned his snake dragon lizard from the talisman ring, and he threw power at the wolf. However, it turned out to be only a breath of wind to the wolf. He became even more angry. The guy who had called for help before thanked the master tamer for saving him, because he already thought that he would die like that. But the young man did not appreciate such politeness and shouted to the guy not to stand like a pillar, but rather get out of this place. But still, the poisonous wolf got to that guy and threw him far away. When the dragon began to use his powers, the wolf activated his ability, an ominous blow. This was a great opportunity to shoot at the beast, so Su-heng shouted at Zio who to shoot. Wang Ji and Zio who simultaneously started firing at the wolf with their machine guns, and he was trying to escape from so many attacks in his direction. But Su-heng foresaw this, and therefore ordered his dragon to use shock and awe. The dragon hit the wolf with all his might. Later, Su-heng and Huang Ji sat in the back of the truck that was taking them back to the base, and were especially silent. Everyone wanted to put their thoughts in order a little after what happened. The red-haired man asked how the guy was feeling and if he was in a bad mood, because he saw that Su-heng was sitting with his head down all the way and thinking about something of his own, as if he was not here at all. The young man replied to Huang Ji that everything was fine with him. He was just deep in thought. Huang Ji tried to diffuse the dejected situation a little and began to talk about the fact that previously they usually did not attract master tamers for invasions of this scale. But if it wasn't for the guy, there would have been at least twice as many losses. This time, Suji really saved them all. Then the man pulled up his sleeve and asked the guy if he saw a scar there. He's had it since he first fought to save the plantation. And that battle was much more terrible than this one. More than 50 people died in it. The armored car was smashed to scrap by a huge steel gorilla in mature form, which turned the whole crew into mush. And in the end, it was Mr. Cao, the then commander-in-chief of the Northern Front, who personally killed the beast and ended that bloody battle. Huang Ji handed the young man a flask and asked for a drink to make it a little easier. He thanked him. Huan said that all this is inevitable. They are all ordinary people. They live here like floating leaves, without roots and support. And no one can guarantee that they will fall asleep today and wake up tomorrow and see the same bright sun. Only if they were master tamers like the guy, then they really would have the opportunity to control their fate. Suji put his hand on the man's shoulder and said that he needed to stop thinking about it all and just get home as soon as possible. Juan really wants to eat the food that Awan has prepared for them. The man rushed around, agreed and said that they needed to eat everything and more so that Avan would even get tired of cooking. The battle to save the plantation was the first time Su-heng faced death face to face. He seemed like a real fighter who, after this nightmare, finally realized that only constant effort can help save himself and protect others in this chaotic world.